And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some of that famous Disney magic dust out in the crowd. Boom. We've transformed this room. We're now in Marsh Memorial Chapel at Springfield College. And over here on the wall, Scotty Wurstburn, put your hand up, please. Scotty represents two plaques. They're over here in the wall of Marsh Memorial Chapel. And you can see in your booklet what they look like. Thank you, Scotty. It's all set. Yeah. And when Scotty does a job, he does it well. And so we're here this morning on this great occasion to honor 6 people who have made a difference in the YMCA and made a difference in countless thousands of people across this country and across the world. And just remember that as we go through some of the information. I'd like to now call on my chief associate in this endeavor, Harold Smith, to deliver the invocation. Harold.
On every table there's a salt cellar. I would appreciate it if you would take that salt cellar. There are 2 on every table. And sort of pass it around and put some salt on your fingers. What is salt used for? It's for taste. Yeah? More, come. To add zest, to add flavor. Brush your teeth. Yeah. Preservation. Excellent. Bunch of wise guys. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." This morning we come as members of the Young Men's Christian Association to honor those who truly are the salt of the earth and have brought light to this world. May God add His blessing to this meeting and an abundant blessing on those we honor this morning. Amen.
So that we can not interrupt you a little bit later, I'd like to have the honorees start up here toward the platform. And while we're doing that, what I'd like to do, we have 3 past inductees with us. And I'd like to introduce them and ask them to stand up, and we will recognize them for their achievements. In the class of '88, Walter Worrell. Walter, stand up and be recognized. Class of '89, Fred Hoshiyama, over here. Fred. And class of '91, Harry Brunger. Harry. Now you can see how the honorees follow my instructions. Nobody's moved. Come on up. Byron, get the... Cliff. Now I have the pleasure of introducing you to the interim president of Springfield College for brief remarks. You notice that I stress brief. My role and responsibility this morning is to keep the program moving. We have an obligation to the conference committee who allowed us to put this in to adjourn on time. So if any of my colleagues up here get carried away, I will pull their shirt tail or something, and they will soon be seated along with their colleagues up here. But President Brumry has been a refreshing addition to the life of Springfield College. He comes from a long history of academic background. He was in the Chancellor's office at the University of Massachusetts, served as interim Chancellor to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has served at least on 2 occasions as president of other institutions. And as we were searching for a president at Springfield College, we needed an outstanding educator to come in and handle the institution for about 1.5 years. Bill had retired from the University of Massachusetts, was headed for Hilton Head. We intercepted him. His wife is, I'm not sure, still forgives us, but he has just been a delight. He also, one of his first statements, and I had nothing to do with this, said, Springfield College, if it's to be a force in this country in education, must return to its roots. Obviously, we in the YMCA know the roots of Springfield College. So it's my pleasure to introduce President Brumry to you this morning. Bill?
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here. I should back up a little bit in my history because before I went to the University of Massachusetts in 1967, I worked for the federal government from 1948 until 67. I have to tell you that for 5 years, while I was with the federal government as a geophysicist, I worked for the National Center of Earthquake Research. So I'm very sensitive when I go to bed at night. And on Wednesday morning when I fly back east, I'll breathe a sigh of relief. But it is a pleasure to be out here, and also, as Peter said earlier, to sit in that office in Marsh Hall. I am looking for the Springfield College to go back to its roots because I think too often we drift away. And I look forward to a closer, mutually beneficial relationship with the YMCA. I've met so many people here and realized the long history of the YMCA and even its connection with the Boy Scouts of America, where I had some familiarity with the Boy Scouts of America. But I look forward to this occasion, and if they dally a little on searching for the next president, my last act may be to come out here next year or wherever your convention will be next year. But as I told Peter, only one more. My wife and I, a couple weeks ago, celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary, and she said the 46th depends on where we are. So thank you very much.
We are gathered here to honor giants in our profession, and it's really a pleasure for me to stand here and be a part of that this morning. We are honoring 3 people who have passed away, but whose name is indelibly in our history, engraved in our history. The first is Luther Gulick. He's best remembered for the triangle, body, mind, and spirit. He attended Oberlin College, was director of the Jackson, Mississippi Association. He was superintendent of the physical training department of the YMCA training school, which became Springfield College. It was Gulick who said to James Naismith, we need some kind of sport to go between football and baseball. Thus, in this 100th anniversary year, basketball was invented. From 1897 to 1903, he served as Secretary of Physical Education Department of the International Committee of the YMCA. Unfortunately, he died at the early age of 53 in 1918. Just imagine a full life from this great person. The second person is William Hunton. He was the son of a former slave who settled in Chatham, Ontario in 1843. His house was a house on the fabled Underground Railroad. And William Hunton grew up in that atmosphere. His father was a pioneer, and Hunton was no less a pioneer. His first Y experience was in Norfolk, Virginia in 1888. He was employed as the YMCA secretary for work among colored men. 3 years later, he became the first Afro-American secretary on the staff of the International Committee. He spent much of 1907 in the Orient, attending the World Student Christian Federation Conference in Tokyo. He received an honorary master's degree from Howard University. Again, unfortunately, at the age of 51, after 2 years of illness, he died in Brooklyn, New York. The next person I had the distinct pleasure of knowing. He was born in Kansas in 1886 and graduated from Baker University in Baldwin City, Kansas. He was involved in the Y student movement. He went to work for the International Committee of the YMCA to develop programs for rural youth. You'll notice there's a theme throughout much of this. He went overseas and studied for a year at Beijing, and then he was in Shanghai developing boys' work there. Executive Secretary for Boys' Work for the Chinese National Council. In 1940, he returned to Columbia for his PhD. He was editor of the Association Press, executive secretary of the Association of Secretaries until 1957. I have to say that when I attended Springfield College in 1959, Jim Lipscomb will remember this, we had L.K. Hall for the history and philosophy of the YMCA. One of my great experiences, because L.K. had lived much of that history, and he made it live for us. And to use Hopkins, those of you who know Hopkins, as a textbook, it can be the most incredibly boring book ever written in the United States. I hope there are no relatives, but I have to say, L.K. made it live. And so these are the inductees that have passed on. And Mr. President, I would like to have you stand. President Brumley, on behalf of the trustees of Springfield College and the YMCA Hall of Fame Committee, I have the honor of presenting to you L.K. Hall, Luther Gulick, and William A. Hunton as inductees into the YMCA Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Mr. Post. For the decorum to be preserved, I'll induct each one separately. Luther H. Gulick, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of the YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the trustees of Springfield College, I now declare you a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame. William A. Hunton, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the trustees of Springfield College, I now declare you a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame. Lawrence K. Hall, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the trustees of Springfield College, I now declare you a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame.
Thank you. And now, for brief remarks, in behalf of these three great people who passed away, we have James Hall, son of L.K. Hall, who will give brief remarks in behalf of all three of the inductees, but more particularly his father. Jim?
Mr. Chairman, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen of APD and IARD. It is an honor for me, my wife Jean, and our nephew Tom Fitch to represent the L.K. Hall family on this occasion. Through the years, Dad received a number of recognitions. These included honorary degrees from his alma mater, Baker University, and from Springfield College. He was honored by the Association of Professional Directors when, in 1969, they established the L.K. Hall Outstanding Director Award. He surely would have felt that this induction now into the YMCA Hall of Fame would have surpassed all others. He has now joined a goodly number of those whom he greatly admired and called friends. Dad was a man who knew grief and sadness. He was widowed twice by the time he was 47. Now, with 4 sons and 2 daughters, he married Mary Ross, with whom he lived for 37 years. Each of his 4 wives gave him love, devotion, and support. His deafness and in later years his blindness were difficult for a man who so loved people, writing, and books. During his lifetime of almost 93 years, Dad's faith in God and love of man continued to grow. L.K. had a sense of humor, as revealed by this anecdote. Dr. John R. Mott was about ready to leave for Stockholm to receive his share of the Nobel Peace Prize and deliver his acceptance speech. Inadvertently, he had left his formal clothes in his home in Florida. He called on L.K. to solve the problem. Dad said with a smile, "I never got to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, but my coat and trousers did." L.K. greatly enjoyed his teaching and his close relationship with students. In recent years, classmates have told me of how they arrived at Springfield College with very little money and didn't know if they could stay. They shared their problem with L.K., and somehow he was able to help them find a way to remain in school. Several of them became very effective YMCA directors. Of his tenure as editor of the Old Guard News, L.K. said, quote, "I have ended each issue with a few comments about whatever happened to be in my mind. These last words were written for elderly friends, many of whom have been my lifelong friends. They seem to like them. They seem to reflect the things I liked, that interested me, what things I believed in a word, the kind of guy I am." Dad also said, "I admit to being a hero worshiper. My admiration and love for the common garden variety of individual does not lessen one whit my almost reverential regard for those whose light shines far because of their true greatness. In the case of Augustine Turner and D. Willard Land, fame was not of their seeking. They are such persons of whom Jesus spoke when he said, 'Let your light so shine that others will think better of God because they have known you.' If L.K. Hall were here today, he would be emphasizing the C in the YMCA and challenging us by quoting, 'Let your light so shine that they will think better of God because they have known you.'"
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. This is not a memorial service. This is a celebration. So when we clap, let's clap for these 3 great inductees, and let's let them hear it. Okay. if I were to read the biographies of all of these 6 candidates, we would be here all morning. So I have tried to excerpt some of the salient points. The first of our living inductees is John F. Long. He joined the YMCA full-time in Brockton, Massachusetts as Industrial and Immigration Secretary. That's a term that many modern people will not recognize. After graduating from Springfield College in 1922, he was certainly known as Mr. YMCA in Brockton, Massachusetts. When he stepped down for Brockton and accepted a similar position in Germantown, Philadelphia YMCA in 1945. During World War II, years brought a number of executives after the World War to the Far East. For 6 years, from 1953 to 1959, he served as a member of the International Committee staff based in the Philippines. From 1959 to 1962, he served as a representative of the international committees of YMCA in Canada in Cairo, Egypt. You can see that this international theme and YMCA in Springfield College is through this entire group of inductees. Second, Clifton M. Drury. His name is synonymous with the YMCA of Michigan. Although he started in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1923. And after that he joined the Michigan YMCA as district director of the Upper Peninsula. He graduated from the Chicago YMCA College. He served in Cadillac, in Detroit, in Lansing. He was a camp director of great renown, and thousands of young men called him Cap as they attended the camp that he directed. He was coordinator, and this is probably my first knowledge of him, as one of his associates contacted me about having Boston people be involved in the World Ambassadors Program. He had a second career. He joined General Douglas MacArthur's staff in Japan. His job was to work with the Ministry of Education to train youth leadership in the Japanese YMCA. Thousands of YMCA secretaries have learned from this man, and he is well revered. I can tell you, as a member of the committee, we had many, many endorsements. Jim Gilbert, my close friend, who is unable to be with us and is a member of the Hall of Fame committee, would be thrilled that Cliff is here this morning receiving this award. Last is Clifford M. Carey. Cliff had strong connections with the YMCA, established early in life. Even his high school yearbook talks about a YMCA career. He graduated from Denison University in 1923 and culminated his education at the University of Southern California with a PhD in 1942. And I think that Dr. Carey would be known as a scholar, an educator, and an author, a great leader of the YMCA. He served in the Dayton, Ohio YMCA, and Chicago and Los Angeles. He joined the national staff and remained on the staff for nearly 28 years until his retirement in 1970. Among the posts he held during that period were the Young Men's Program from 1942 to 1950, Director of Research and Planning, and editor of the YMCA Yearbook from 1951 to 1963, Executive for Program and Research from 1963 to 1968, and his final post as Associate General Executive from 1968 to 1970. As I said, he was a great author and co-authored many important works in the YMCA. This Christmas he will celebrate. Come in. Obviously, I asked people to get excited, and this Christmas he will celebrate his 67th anniversary with his 2 sons, 8 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. Mr. President, on behalf of the trustees of Springfield College, I present these 3 persons who have made an outstanding record in their YMCA careers to you for induction.
Mr. Clifford M. Carey. Clifford M. Carey, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and by the trustees of Springfield College, I now declare you a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame and welcome you to the privileges and responsibilities of membership. Mr. Clifton M. Drury. Clifton M. Drury, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and by the trustees of Springfield College, I now declare you a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame and welcome you to the privileges and responsibilities of membership.
Accepting for John Long will be his daughter, Theodora Hodges. Also present is another daughter, Helen Field, and her husband, William Field, who are out here. And so we appreciate their being here. John is how old? 97. So he just felt he couldn't come from Massachusetts all the way to California.
I'll take a little aside because his son-in-law, Bill Field, was dean of students when I was chancellor at the University of Massachusetts. John Long lived just a couple blocks where I live in Amherst, and also had the pleasure of enjoying his 70th class reunion a couple weeks ago at Springfield College, class of 1922. And at 97, I just look forward to moving as fast as he was moving. John F. Long, by virtue of the authority given me by the National Council of YMCAs of Canada, by the YMCA of the USA, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and by the trustees of Springfield College. I now declare John F. Long a member of the YMCA Hall of Fame and welcome him to the privileges and responsibilities of membership.
And now for our inductees to make their remarks. And I will, good friend of mine, Parker Lansdale, one of my early mentors in my career, just had Cliff Carey at the top of his list of people who have contributed to the YMCA as an intellectual, as a person who stimulated all of us to think and improve our intellectual capacity in the YMCA. So, Cliff, I'd like to have you come up and say a few words.
Mr. Chairman of the Selection Committee and all of its members and all of you, I would like you to know how pleased and honored I am to become a member of the YMCA's Hall of Fame. I have a special invitation, really a special thank you note for the person who introduced me to the committee, and at some time when I discover who it really was, I'm going to send it. It's a special honor for me to be inducted at the same time that L.K. Hall has been inducted. He was a longtime friend and a very special counselor for me. He was one of many who made it possible for me to be here at this place and in this particular relationship. There were many others, and I'd like to mention some of them because over time I neglected to thank them for the contribution they made to improving my work and to directing the kinds of activities that I would be involved in and in keeping me in touch with the main philosophy and purpose of the YMCA. I'd have to begin back quite a ways with Paul McKee, who was the Boys Work Secretary in Dayton, Ohio, who introduced me to YMCA camping. He also introduced me to a lot of other YMCA programs. And I think it was a result of all of those activities that got me interested enough in the YMCA to pursue it as a vocation. There were others like him, and since, as I've said, over time I neglected to thank them properly, it seems to me this is a good occasion for me to tell you who they were and to give you some indication as to how they influenced the direction and quality of my work in the YMCA. In addition to L.K. that I've already mentioned, there was Roy Sorensen, who at the time was a member of the national staff, and Hedley Dimmock, who was a member of the faculty at George Williams College. As a young professional, they made a deep impression on me. I listened to the things that they talk about. I read the things that they wrote about, and I looked at the way in which they managed their activities as professionals in the YMCA. It meant a great deal to me. It got me interested in research and resulted in my becoming more oriented in that direction than I might otherwise have been. There were others, too, like Harold Wagner, who, as the executive for the LA YMCA, invited me to join the staff. This came at a time when the Depression was just getting over, and moving to Los Angeles was a sort of a lifting experience to open up new avenues and new opportunities for work. I had become a little discouraged with the YMCA during that Depression period, and this helped to make me have a fresh approach and give me a chance to work again with a new interest and new vigor. Finally, there was J. Edward Sprode, who arranged the invitation for me to join the national staff, and that was a platform from which it was possible for me to exercise my interest in research and study and to be involved in things like the publication and authorship of the yearbook. This was, again, an opening up of opportunity that made it possible for me to advance and work in the YMCA. I'd like to recognize all these people. I'd like to recognize some who are in this audience for the contribution they made to my YMCA experience, for the help that they gave me in making it possible for me to be here at this time in this relationship. And thank you all.
Cliff was always known as being precise, and I think to the second he used the time that Byron gave him. I hope you noticed how many of the people he mentioned are already in the Hall of Fame. It's just, it seems to work that way. Cliff Drury, I'd like to call on you for your remarks at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wonderful friends of the YMCA. I'd like to recognize, first of all, two special people, as you might know them as I know them. Dr. Ralph Bloxma, a retired plastic surgeon, who roams the world today at the age of 80 years old, still plying his trade in places where the plastic trade is unknown. I pay a special tribute, Dr. Ralph, for your being here today. And to my own son, Dennis, born in a YMCA camping family, a young brat at the age of 4 in camp, later a camp counselor, later moving through until he became the chairman of our state YMCA committee. He's my guide, my counselor, and my co-worker in this enterprise. It's been a wonderful many years with the YMCA. It's been a real ball, believe me, and I couldn't commence to thank everybody for the part you have had in making it possible. Camping, some 50 years of it, physical education, Forward to Boys conferences, or Sing of the Bygone Day, high clubs, part of a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that I had to serve as a YMCA worker. In later years, I was privileged to be related to the foreign field, being the ambassador, the chairman of the coordinator of the World Ambassador Program. It took some 400 college people to some 40 different countries of the world as emissaries of goodwill from our country. And so I've had a wonderful, wonderful career. And I thank all of you for the privilege of having had a part in it. I'm reminded of the story of the young sports writer who at a long age of service in his field wrote his final report. He'd covered all the great Olympic Games, the growing events on the Thames, the great soccer matches. He'd seen them all and wrote about them all. And in his last report, he wrote these lines with which I close. The doctor tells what his trained eyes see. He says it's the last of the ninth for me. One more play of the field looms dark, and I must leave this glorious park. It's been a grand game from opening bell, good plays, all bad plays, all pell-mell. I deeply regret that I cannot stay, but I thank you, God, that you let me play. 69 years with the YMCA.
Theodora Hutt for John Law.
happy to be here to represent my father and also my mother, who has shared his career and therefore, I believe, partakes of this honor as much as he does. I'll read, if you'll forgive me, remarks that he prepared 2 weeks ago. President Bromley, Dr. Cole, fellow inductees, my daughters Theodora and Helen, friends and associates of the YMCA. Although my wife Agnes and I'll pause here to say she's the same age as he, attended with pleasure the 70th anniversary of the graduation of the Springfield College class in 1922, just a few weeks ago. It was not possible for us to make the much longer trip to attend these most important induction ceremonies. I am proud, however, to be represented by my daughter. It is with genuine humility and deep appreciation that I accept election to the YMCA Hall of Fame. This honor, which was totally unexpected, serves as a special endorsement of the ideals the founders of this far-flung movement had in heart and mind. It is a movement with which I have been proudly associated since my election as president of the student YMCA of Mercersburg Academy in 1916. It is a movement which has met with success many great challenges at home and abroad, and which gave my wife and me a unique opportunity to make our contribution. I wish every success to those who are carrying on the work of the Y in these difficult times. On behalf of my family and myself, I accept this great honor. John Franklin Long.
One cannot help but be moved in a ceremony like this. For me, it's exciting to be a part of it. And if you'll look over to this, to Scotty, this is Marsh Memorial Chapel. We now have 6 more plaques added to the chapel. You can now return to California, and I would like to call on my colleague, once again, Harold Smith, for the benediction. Thank you very much.
I wonder if each of you could stand, turn to the person on your right, and greet them with, "You are the salt of the earth." And then,
You are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth.
then to the person on your left with, "You are the light of the world."
You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world.
May God's richest blessing fall on all of us, and may we go forth into the world, shedding light, even as those we honor today have shed light in the world. Go in peace. Amen.
You may come up and greet the inductees.